all. Again, here I am. I am Professor H. Srikanth. You are aware of my YouTube channel, Lecture Series in Political Theory. As part of this series, I have uploaded several talks earlier on Marxism and critical political theory. Of late, I started interrogating liberal political theory. In the first lecture, I have discussed in detail the history and the evolution of classical liberalism and explained the basic tenets of liberal political thinkers. In the second lecture, I reflected on why Edmund Burke, the conservative philosopher, opposed the French Revolution of 1789 and why he found classical liberalism unacceptable. In this talk, I will focus on Marxist criticism of liberalism and its conceptions of rights, economy, and the state. Marx and Engels were the socialist philosophers of the 19th century who laid the foundation for what came to be known afterwards as Marxism. They were the contemporaries of 19th century classical liberal thinkers like Bentham, J.S. Mill, and T.H. Green. Liberalism did not enthuse the socialists like Marx and Engels, who felt that it had little to offer to the working class and other laboring masses. They made a systematic study of the evolution of capitalism and came out with a critique of liberal political philosophy as well. Marx and Engels' analysis of liberalism and democracy is found in their works such as The Jewish Question, The Communist Manifesto, The Origins of the Family, Private Property, and the State. Their works highlighted both the significance as well as the limitations of a liberal bourgeois democracy. After the death of Marx and Engels, Marxist thought was further elaborated and concretized in the works of Marxist thinkers like V.I. Lenin. In his major work, State and Revolution, and also in many other pamphlets and talks, Lenin made a systematic critique of liberal bourgeois state in the age of imperialism. So these thinkers' ideas actually constitute the base for further Marxist reflections on liberalism. Marxism looks at liberalism from the viewpoint of the working class. All Marxist thinkers acknowledge the role of liberal political thinkers who inspired democratic revolutions in the West that virtually put an end to feudalism. They don't deny the fact that liberalism paved the way for rapid development of technology and national wealth. And it reorganized the society and politics based on the ideas of individualism, secularism, rationalism, and humanism. They admit that liberalism popularized the ideas of democracy, liberty, universal adult franchise, and citizens' rights. Marxism acknowledges that liberal ideas were historically progressive compared to regressive conservative ideas of feudal times. Nevertheless, Marxists identify liberalism as the ideology of the bourgeoisie and point out the limitations of both the theory and practice of liberalism. According to Marxists, from the beginning, there was nexus between liberalism and capitalism. Despite the bourgeois influence, liberalism in its earlier phase remained a progressive force as long as it was fighting against feudalism and despotic rule. However, once capitalism reached the stage of imperialism, Marxists say the bourgeoisie lost their progressive character and liberal democracy became the smokescreen for pursuing monopoly interests. In the Communist Manifesto itself, Marx and Engels analyzed how the bourgeoisie destroyed the old ways of life and created a society in its own image. Marx saw in Hobbesian state of nature an image of a capitalist society where the people are at war with one another. It was a war of all against all, where the men are alienated from their humanness and from their fellows. In my earlier lectures on Marxism, I have explained the impact of capitalism and the alienation of the working class. Those who are interested may listen to my lectures on Marxist political theory, more particularly the lecture on the alienation. In this lecture, let me focus on Marxist analysis of liberalism. In my introductory lecture on liberalism, I have explained how the liberals made individual the center of the universe and looked at the society and the state only from the viewpoint of individual and individual rights. Marxism says that liberalism ignores the ground realities and assumes individuals as free rational beings, each one capable of pursuing his or her interests. Taking on this liberal ideology of individualism, Marxists say that society is more than an association of isolated individuals. Man does not live in isolation or hover in the mid-air. Man is a man of a particular class, community, race, or nation and tied to other men. Society is not something homogeneous. More specifically, after the birth and consolidation of the institution of private property, the society finds itself divided into antagonistic classes. Individuals find themselves part of one or the other classes or groups, which define their identity and their role in the society. In all class divided societies, individual is influenced by class ideologies. Man pursues his or her interests as member of particular classes and unconsciously pursues class interests, believing that to be one's own personal interest. Most ideas that the individuals express are the dominant ideas of the times that he or she lives in. They are not always ideas which reflect reason. Marxism does not subscribe to the liberal idea of natural rights of its citizens, nor does it consider rights as the gift of the rulers. How did the people get rights? The people have fought to secure those rights. The liberal thinkers advocated the rights of individuals, all that right to liberty, right to participate in elections, right to religion, right to freedom of expression, etc. Liberalism also spoke about the equality of citizens before law. Okay. Marxism does not negate the importance of these rights. However, it points out that in a class divided society where private property dominates, capital dominates, these rights are enjoyed more by the propertied classes. Most of these rights cannot be enjoyed by poor workers, peasants, and other laboring masses. Political equality or equality before law do not make much sense when there is no social and economic equality in the society. Freedoms guaranteed by liberal law are constrained by inequality and exploitation inherent in the capitalist societies. In his work, The Jewish Person, Marx exposed the fundamental contradictions and hypocrisies of the rights discourse and revealed the meaninglessness of liberal freedoms in a world of vast inequalities in property and power. Making fun of the liberal conception of equality, some Marxist scholars pointed out it is like saying both beggars and businessmen alike are allowed to buy mansions. But can the beggars buy mansions? There lies the hitch. Marxists actually interrogate the liberal conception of private property as natural rights and expose how liberalism that justifies the institution of private property hides the fact that in capitalist society, more and more people get deprived of the ownership and control over the means of production as capitalism advances. Attacking the liberal view of laissez-faire, that is free trade or free competition. Marx, in his classic work, Capital, argued that free competition can never be the law of capitalism. Why? Because free competition in course of time gives birth to monopolies. And once the monopoly is established, you can say that free competition will be replaced by monopoly competition. Later, actually, Lenin, in his work on imperialism, showed how the birth of financial oligarchy facilitates monopoly control over all aspects of national economy, and how that actually empowers the monopolies to control the state and the society. Of course, in the Communist Manifesto itself, Marx and Engels asserted that the state in capitalist society is nothing but a committee for managing the common affairs of the bourgeoisie. In some works, Marx spoke of the possibility of autonomy of the capitalist state in the early stages of capitalism. That means the state can enjoy certain autonomy from the contending classes. That was what in some works of Marx and Engels you can find reference to that. However, Lenin later argued that with capitalism reaching the stage of imperialism, the state becomes subordinate to the monopoly interests. And all that autonomy which the state had in the early phase or early stages of development of capitalism disappears, exposing the hollowness of bourgeois democracy in the modern imperialist phase. Lenin says that democratic republic is the best possible political shell for capitalism. He says, once capital gains the possession of this very best shell, it establishes its power so securely, so firmly, that no change of persons, institutions, or parties in the bourgeois democratic republic can shake its foundations. Marxists contend that capital dominates in every state in which private property, ownership over land and means of production by private owners, they exist. To Marxists, as long as capital exists, it dominates the whole society, and no democratic republic, no franchise can change its essence. In all capitalist societies, the state remains a machine used by the capitalists to keep the working class and the poor peasants in subjection. Howsoever democratic it may appear to be, liberal democratic state is no more than a bourgeois state. Universal suffrage, the constituent assembly, and the judiciary, etc., are only outward forms. They are like mere promissory notes, which do not alter the essence of the bourgeois state. Liberalism may talk of individual freedom and human rights. But when the downtrodden asserts they claim their rights, the liberal bourgeois state views it as a threat to its existence. It may tolerate the opposition from other bourgeois parties, but when the opposition comes from the proletariat or the peasants and thing, it cannot tolerate. The state can never be neutral when the interests of the working class or working masses conflict with the interests of the capitalists and landlords. The state, then, if there is such a conflict, the state would use all its might. It will not act as a neutral authority trying to balance both. Rather, the state would use all its might to preserve private property and accord every support to protect and preserve the property rights of every merchant, industrialist, and manufacturer. Does it mean that liberalism is of no value to the workers or the socialist parties working for socialism? Marx's answer to this is very complex. Marxists are critical of different dimensions of theory and practice of liberalism, as we have seen. They point out class blindness of liberalism and expose liberalism's flirtation with capitalism and imperialism. However, while analyzing the inherent contradictions and weaknesses of liberal democracy, Marxism do not overlook its historic significance. Means historic significance of liberal political theory. They believe that rationalism inherent in liberal perspective is preferable compared to the prejudices of tradition or religious beliefs. They admit that universal adult franchise, freedom of press, right to freedom of conscience, etc., are great advances towards democratization. Marxists don't reject in a way everything that liberalism says. Rather, they evaluate liberalism from a dialectical materialist perspective and see what should be rejected and what should be used for promoting the cause of the working class. Marxists realize that many of the rights of liberal democracy cannot be enjoyed by the working class and the poor in the existing framework, capitalist framework. They realize also how the hegemony of the liberal bourgeois ideas sometimes create the illusion in the minds of the people, even the working class, about the neutrality of the state and the possibility of resolving the problems of the working class and other laboring masses within the capitalist framework through parliamentary elections, etc. Marxist theoreticians consider it their duty as a duty of all communists to expose such illusions and educate the workers and other laboring masses as to why their interests cannot be addressed within the liberal bourgeois framework. But at the same time, they also advise the communists to take advantage of the rights guaranteed within the bourgeois society in order to educate or organize the working class and the peasantry. Although Marxist revolutionaries don't believe in the idea of establishing socialism through parliamentarian way, they say that you have to make use of the parliaments and the elections. They say that as long as the people have illusions about bourgeois democracy, the communists should participate in the parliamentary elections. Not so much to form governments, which in general they cannot form because they don't have money. You know how the elections take place in bourgeois democracies. But nevertheless, the communists should participate in these democratic processes, mainly to educate the masses. So that they can demystify bourgeois democracy and impart revolutionary education to the masses. Liberal rights such as right to form associations and right to freedom of expression, they should be used. They should be used by the socialists to educate, organize, and prepare the masses for the fight for socialist democracy. In this sense, you can see Marxists do believe that liberal democracy, with all its limitations, does pave the way for a future socialist society. This, in a nutshell, is the Marxist analysis of liberalism. You just compare it with Burke's conservative criticism of liberalism, which I explained in my earlier video lecture, and see which of the theory or evaluation of liberalism you find it acceptable. Don't ask me for my opinion. You think on your own. But let me also tell you that conservatives and Marxists are not the only people who interrogated liberalism. There are many other scholars and schools of thought. Liberals also have responded in their own way to all this criticism, and they also reformulated their own ideas in recent times. I'll be introducing to you the analysis of some of the contemporary liberal thinkers and also the critics of those thinkers in my subsequent lectures. Let me stop here for time being. I'll be back soon with another lecture on another topic relating to liberalism. If you have any comments, queries, and differences of opinions or suggestions, don't hesitate to write in the comment section. I will go through them, and if needed, I will reflect on them in my subsequent lectures. Hope you find this exercise exciting and useful. And if you like my lectures, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with other like-minded friends, scholars, activists interested in political theory. Thank you very much, and see you soon.